Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dean, and in this video I wanted to talk about how to bounce back from setbacks that are inevitable in life, whether you're an entrepreneur or any other walk of life. Life is challenging. It's never a straight shot up and to the right, and even the strongest and smartest of us will get knocked down. Here are some tips for entrepreneurs and other business builders who may be interested in learning a bit more about my process and how I deal with the low lows and how I maintain an even keel through all of this. My name is Dean. I am the CEO of Stealth Capital. We are one of the top performing companies in the space that we operate. These videos are made for my future children and their children, so hopefully they can look back on Pop and Grandpop's life and learn a few things from the mistakes that I've made along the way. And I hope this is useful to you as the audience as well. So I think first off, anybody who's interested in an entrepreneurial path as opposed to a more traditional career path should ready themselves mentally and psychologically for a lot of setbacks, a lot of mistakes, a lot of pains and bumps along the way. And just because you're ready for it in theory doesn't mean that you're actually ready for it in actuality. And I really enjoyed this interview. It was given by a Navy SEAL instructor, and he was talking about whether or not it would be helpful for young Navy SEAL recruits ahead of their BUDS training, which is 6 months of some of the hardest training there is, to begin working out and getting cold exposure therapy and doing all this stuff. Funnily enough, he said, starting to do some of those things is great, but doing excess amounts of it is like preparing yourself to get kicked in the nuts, knowing that you'll have to get kicked in the nuts a few times. It's better that you just take it and move forward with it, as opposed to thinking that you can prepare ahead of time and save yourself some pain going through the process. And I think that's very similar in life, in the sense that you can prepare as best you can. You can read all the self-help books you can, talk to the most motivational speakers or listen to the most motivational speakers and get amped up. But inevitably, life is going to knock down all of us. And the key is, how do you build in practices such that you're able to bounce back quickly, reliably, consistently, and also cut losses in terms of not allowing yourself to dip too low, whether it's in your financial bank account, whether it's your emotional bank account, and your psychological bank account. I think the first thing is it's really important to build a very strong support system, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's your accountability partners. In any endeavor that you are going through, you're going to have volatility in terms of your own state across your mental state, emotional state, physical state, financial state. And to weather those volatilities, it's very useful to have a support system of people who support you in what you're trying to do. And in times when you are feeling uncertain, at least having people to bounce ideas off of so that you don't feel utterly alone in your process. Ideally, it's somebody who is on a similar path who you can check in periodically, but it's always nice to have family that care about you, and even if they don't necessarily know exactly what you're working on, checking in with them periodically is excellent in terms of keeping yourself emotionally and psychologically healthy in a time when a lot of people are pretty isolated, both by technology as well as the pandemic. And in doing so, I think leads to a certain level of support and happiness that prevents you from dipping to any lows that are tougher to come back from. The second thing is make decisions from a probabilistic standpoint. And this comes from a lot of these books that talk about whether you're a poker player, whether you're a trader, etc. And just to be clear, none of this is financial advice. This is merely for educational and entertainment purposes only. A book that I really enjoyed and I've come back to and referenced a couple times is this book called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. It's a book written by a former professional poker player, and she talks about what it's like to make decisions with imperfect information, which she argues in the book is much closer to real life decision making than a game like chess, for example, where all of the information is already available at the onset. In life, you're rarely, if ever, given all the information and relevant facts, and the game of life is to make decisions based upon those imperfect sets of information and learning to live with the results, even though it's almost impossible to know how a result will turn out, even if you might have the highest probabilities of a certain outcome. And one of the key concepts in making decisions is what she refers to as resulting, or in colloquial terms, hindsight bias. I think a lot of times it's very easy for people to look back and say, wow, that was obvious, or that was inevitable. There's a famous saying, which is, in hindsight, it was inevitable. But in reality, it's rarely ever that simple, in the sense that at any given snapshot moment in time, there is a probabilistic outcome of different outcomes that the future may hold based on different probabilities and different inputs of different variables. And so as a decision maker, it's not useful to beat yourself up over an end result that didn't necessarily turn out the way that you wanted it to be, but rather it's better to examine the process of, did you make the correct decisions given probabilistic landscape and the information that was available to you at the time? And if the answer was yes, you shouldn't beat yourself up just because the result did not turn out the way that you want it to be, because even the most probable things, like with 99% chance of happening, might have that 1% outcome where it does not happen that way. And if you were to judge the probabilities going into that result based on purely the output, then it would be a very inaccurate way of viewing life. So I think there's a couple of things to take away from this concept, which is that, number one, even the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, which is a famous John Steinbeck novel. But more importantly, perhaps, is understanding that we are always working with imperfect information. The game of life is to try and do our best with this information to make the least bad decisions we can as we progress towards the various goals that we encounter along the way. And in the process, to learn from our decision-making models, how can we not make the same mistakes over and over again, correct any biases we see in our decision-making process, and move forward with the understanding that the end results do not always reflect the probabilities going into that end result, and having a certain stoic outlook in regards to outcomes, because we can only put our best foot forward, and sometimes luck, God, or fate has more say in our ultimate outcome than we necessarily have a priori. And it's something to accept and move on with life. So to summarize, we talked about having an important support network of friends and family to check in and make sure that you are emotionally and psychologically healthy in terms of having a generally positive outlook on life. Second, we talked about the probabilistic framework of decision making not being unduly biased by resulting or hindsight bias. And the last thing I think is just the fundamentals, right? Focusing on the fundamentals. Sometimes when you are fighting fires, it's very easy to forget to eat, to sleep, to drink water, to exercise. But those things, I think, are the founding pillars of any healthy human life. And for me, just going back to the anchors of remembering to get adequate sleep at the correct times of day, right? You don't want to have lopsided sleep schedules that are against the rising and falling of the sun. You want to eat healthy foods without too much excess sugar. Obviously, keeping your body active. Our bodies were not meant to be sitting in a chair in front of a computer for tens of hours every single week, and disciplining oneself to go every single day to be healthy, whether it's a weightlifting routine, whether it's running, whether it's a game outside like tennis or soccer or whatever you're interested in, right? Keeping those routines in check and understanding that these are habits and routines that you want to build for the rest of your life. You don't want to just kind of do it and then, whether it's a target of an X amount of money you want to make, or you want to sell your company and have an exit of some variety in the next few years, don't think of it as like that's what you're chasing for. You want to install these habits and these frameworks and these decision-making models that are constantly improving and getting better with time, because these are things that you enjoy the process of doing and also will improve with time, and things that will make your life as enjoyable as possible for as long as possible. So that's it for me from today. I hope you guys have a wonderful week and stay healthy, stay intelligent, stay safe, hug your loved ones. If you enjoy content like this, feel free to subscribe here, leave a comment on any topics you'd like me to talk about on the next videos, and also feel free to find me on Twitter. I appreciate your support very much. Until next time, take care.